What if I told you that a single sentence in French transformed a tired waitress into a millionaire executive? For Sarah Chen, serving tables was just a temporary job while she finished college. She had no idea that the quiet man at the corner table was watching her every move, waiting for the perfect moment. This isn't just another story about being in the right place at the right time. This is the story of how a billionaire managed to see a diamond in the rough, where everyone else saw just another invisible employee. And it all started with a black envelope and a plane ticket that would change her life forever. Did you know that 73% of life-changing opportunities happen in the most ordinary places? Sarah Chen learned this the hard way on what started as just another Tuesday shift at Murphy's Diner in downtown Seattle. The morning rush was brutal, coffee was burning, and her feet were already screaming in pain by 10 a.m. She had no idea that in less than 3 hours her entire world would be turned upside down. The smell of bacon grease and stale cigarettes from the smoking section would soon become the backdrop for the most important conversation of her life. What she thought was going to be her worst day at work was actually about to become her ticket out of that life forever. Sarah wasn't your typical waitress, though nobody bothered to look close enough to notice. While her co-workers complained about difficult customers, she was mentally conjugating French verbs she'd learned during her 2 years studying abroad in Lyon. Her literature degree was collecting dust in her tiny studio apartment while she served endless cups of coffee to pay off student loans that seemed to grow bigger every month. The irony wasn't lost on her that she could discuss Voltaire in perfect Parisian French, but couldn't afford to buy the books she desperately wanted to read. Her dreams of working for an international organization felt more distant with each passing day, buried under the weight of financial reality. The lunch rush was particularly chaotic that Tuesday, with 3 servers calling in sick and a broken espresso machine creating a line of angry caffeine addicts. Sarah was juggling 4 tables when she noticed him, a man in his mid-50s sitting alone in the corner booth, wearing a simple dark suit that somehow looked more expensive than anything she'd ever seen. He wasn't scrolling through his phone like everyone else, wasn't tapping impatiently for service, wasn't even looking at the menu. Instead, he was watching the controlled chaos of the diner with the focused attention of someone studying a complex equation. There was something about his stillness that felt different, almost predatory, like a hunter patiently waiting for the perfect moment to strike. What Sarah didn't know was that this wasn't a coincidence. The man had been coming to Murphy's Diner for 3 weeks, always ordering the same black coffee, always sitting in the same corner booth, always watching. He wasn't there for the food or even the coffee, which was admittedly terrible. He was there because he had a very specific problem that required a very specific type of person to solve, and he believed he might have found her. But first, he needed to see something that would prove his instincts were right. The test was about to begin, and Sarah had no idea she was about to take the most important exam of her life. Here's what nobody knew about Sarah Chen. She was fluent in 4 languages and had spent 2 years living in France on a full academic scholarship. While her co-workers saw just another college dropout serving coffee, Sarah had actually graduated summa cum laude with a degree in international relations from the University of Washington. She'd been the star student in her French literature program, writing her thesis on post-war European cultural exchanges. But life has a way of crushing dreams, and when her father's construction business went bankrupt during her senior year, Sarah had to choose between her own future and saving her family from financial ruin. She chose family, like she always did. The scholarship to the Sorbonne that she'd worked 3 years to earn, gone. The internship at the French embassy in D.C. that would have launched her diplomatic career disappeared overnight. Sarah watched her carefully planned future crumble while she picked up double shifts at Murphy's Diner to help pay her parents' mortgage. Every morning, she'd wake up in her cramped studio apartment, look at her framed degree hanging next to her work uniform, and feel a little piece of her soul die. The girl who used to debate French politics with professors in Lyon was now asking if customers wanted their eggs over easy or scrambled. She'd convinced herself this was temporary, just until her dad got back on his feet. But 3 years later, temporary was starting to feel permanent. What made it worse was the invisible nature of her talent. Sarah could switch between English, French, Mandarin, and Spanish mid-conversation without missing a beat. She could read the subtle cultural cues that most people missed, navigate complex social dynamics with ease, and connect with people from completely different worlds. But in a greasy diner in Seattle, those skills were about as useful as a Ferrari in a traffic jam. Her customers saw a young Asian woman in a stained apron who smiled politely while they complained about cold coffee. They had no idea they were talking to someone who could have been negotiating international trade deals or translating for world leaders. The cruel irony was that Sarah had stopped believing in her own worth. 3 years of being treated as invisible had convinced her that maybe she really was just another waitress. Maybe her dreams had been too big. Maybe she'd been fooling herself about her potential. She'd started accepting that some people are meant for greatness and others are meant to serve those people their breakfast. But she was wrong about one thing. She wasn't invisible to everyone. Someone had been watching, someone who recognized diamonds in the rough, and someone who was about to prove that the right opportunity can change everything in a single moment. Most billionaires don't eat at greasy diners in downtown Seattle, but Marcus Sterling wasn't most billionaires. The 54-year-old founder of Sterling Global had built his empire on one simple principle. Talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. While other executives spent their time in boardrooms and country clubs, Marcus had a habit that his competitors thought was crazy. He went looking for diamonds in the rough in the most unexpected places. Gas stations, grocery stores, coffee shops, anywhere people worked jobs that were beneath their potential. He discovered his current VP of operations working as a night janitor at a tech company, and his head of international relations was a former Uber driver who spoke 6 languages. Marcus had been coming to Murphy's Diner for 3 weeks, not for the terrible coffee or greasy food, but because he had a problem that was about to cost his company $200 million. Sterling Global was trying to expand into the French luxury market, but every negotiation had failed spectacularly. French business culture was built on subtlety, respect for tradition, and personal relationships, everything that American corporate tactics destroyed on contact. His team of Harvard MBAs kept approaching these deals like hostile takeovers, and the French companies kept slamming doors in their faces. Marcus needed someone who could bridge 2 completely different worlds, someone who understood both American ambition and French sophistication. The waitress with the tired eyes had caught his attention on his first visit. While her co-workers moved through their shifts like robots, she carried herself differently. There was something in the way she listened to customers, the way she diffused tense situations, the way she seemed to read people before they even spoke. Marcus had built his fortune on reading people, and his instincts were screaming that this woman was special. But instincts weren't enough. He needed proof. He'd been conducting his own quiet investigation for weeks, watching how she handled difficult customers, observing her natural grace under pressure, waiting for the right moment to see what she was really made of. What Marcus didn't expect was how that moment would arrive. He'd been prepared to create a test situation, maybe arrange for a difficult customer or stage some kind of crisis. But sometimes the universe provides its own tests, and when that confused French tourist walked through the diner's doors that Tuesday afternoon, Marcus knew he was about to witness something extraordinary. He set down his coffee cup, leaned back in his booth, and prepared to watch Sarah Chen prove that she was exactly what his company had been searching for all along. Most billionaires don't eat at greasy diners in downtown Seattle. But Marcus Sterling wasn't most billionaires. The 54-year-old founder of Sterling Global had built his empire on one simple principle: talent is everywhere, but opportunity isn't. While other executives spent their time in boardrooms and country clubs, Marcus had a habit that his competitors thought was crazy. He went looking for diamonds in the rough in the most unexpected places: gas stations, grocery stores, coffee shops, anywhere people worked jobs that were beneath their potential. He'd discovered his current VP of operations working as a night janitor at a tech company, and his head of international relations was a former Uber driver who spoke 6 languages. Marcus had been coming to Murphy's Diner for 3 weeks, not for the terrible coffee or greasy food, but because he had a problem that was about to cost his company $200 million. Sterling Global was trying to expand into the French luxury market, but every negotiation had failed spectacularly. French business culture was built on subtlety, respect for tradition, and personal relationships, everything that American corporate tactics destroyed on contact. His team of Harvard MBAs kept approaching these deals like hostile takeovers, and the French companies kept slamming doors in their faces. Marcus needed someone who could bridge 2 completely different worlds, someone who understood both American ambition and French sophistication. The waitress with the tired eyes had caught his attention on his first visit. While her co-workers moved through their shifts like robots, she carried herself differently. There was something in the way she listened to customers, the way she diffused tense situations, the way she seemed to read people before they even spoke. Marcus had built his fortune on reading people, and his instincts were screaming that this woman was special, but instincts weren't enough. He needed proof. He'd been conducting his own quiet investigation for weeks, watching how she handled difficult customers, observing her natural grace under pressure, waiting for the right moment to see what she was really made of. What Marcus didn't expect was how that moment would arrive. He'd been prepared to create a test situation, maybe arrange for a difficult customer or stage some kind of crisis. But sometimes the universe provides its own tests, and when that confused French tourist walked through the diner's doors that Tuesday afternoon, Marcus knew he was about to witness something extraordinary. He set down his coffee cup, leaned back in his booth, and prepared to watch Sarah Chen prove that she was exactly what his company had been searching for all along. The elderly French woman who walked into Murphy's Diner at 2:47 p.m. looked completely out of place. Dressed in an elegant coat that probably cost more than Sarah made in 3 months, she clutched her purse nervously and scanned the room with wide, frightened eyes. She approached the hostess stand where Jake, the teenage host, was scrolling through his phone and barely looked up when she tried to speak. "Excusez-moi, where is the metro station?" she asked in heavily accented English, her voice trembling with confusion. Jake just shrugged and pointed vaguely toward the street, clearly annoyed by the interruption. The woman tried again in rapid French, explaining that she was lost, that her phone was dead, that she was supposed to meet her tour group at Pike Place Market but had gotten turned around. That's when Robert Henderson, a loud insurance salesman from Table 6, decided to play the hero. Henderson was the kind of customer Sarah dreaded, arrogant, condescending, and always looking for attention. He'd been hitting on his much younger date all lunch, name-dropping his expensive watch and bragging about his downtown condo. Now he saw his chance to look sophisticated. Well, looks like we got ourselves a lost little tourist," he announced loudly, standing up from his table. He swaggered over to the Frenchwoman and started butchering the language with an accent so bad it was painful to hear. "Bonjour, madame. Voulez-vous? Sit down." The entire diner turned to watch the spectacle as Henderson gestured wildly, speaking louder, as if volume would somehow improve his terrible pronunciation. Sarah felt her stomach clench as she watched the elderly woman's face crumple with confusion and embarrassment. This wasn't just bad French, it was humiliating for both of them. The woman tried to respond, but Henderson kept interrupting with more mangled phrases, clearly enjoying the attention he was getting from other customers. Sarah had seen enough. Something inside her snapped. Not anger, but something deeper. A recognition that this woman deserved dignity, deserved to be heard, deserved better than being turned into entertainment for a dining room full of strangers. Sarah set down her coffee pot, wiped her hands on her apron, and walked toward them with quiet determination. What happened next changed everything. Sarah approached the elderly woman and spoke in perfect, flowing French. Not the textbook French of a college student, but the warm, conversational French of someone who had lived the language. Madame, je suis désolé pour cette situation. Puis-je vous aider? The effect was immediate and electric. Henderson's mouth fell open mid-sentence. The diner went quiet. Even the kitchen staff peeked out to see what was happening. But most importantly, the French woman's face lit up with profound relief as Sarah continued, Ne vous inquiétez pas. Nous allons vous aider à retrouver votre groupe. In the corner booth, Marcus Sterling leaned forward slightly, his coffee cup frozen halfway to his lips. He'd been waiting 3 weeks for this moment, but even he hadn't expected it to be this perfect. Sarah barely slept that night. She sat on her tiny couch, staring at the plane ticket and turning it over in her hands like it might disappear if she blinked. Her roommate Maya found her there at 2 a.m., still in her work uniform, surrounded by printouts she'd made of Marcus Sterling's biography. Sarah, what the hell is going on? You look like you've seen a ghost. When Sarah explained everything, the French woman, the envelope, the plane ticket to Paris, Maya's reaction was exactly what she'd expected. Are you insane? This is literally how horror movies start. Rich guy, mysterious note, isolated location. You're gonna end up chained to a radiator in some French basement. But Sarah had done her research, and Marcus Sterling wasn't some random creep. He was one of the most respected business leaders in the world, known for his unconventional hiring practices and his company's ethical standards. Maya spent the next 3 hours trying to talk Sarah out of going. Think about this logically, she pleaded. You have a stable job, you're finally getting your life together, and now you want to throw it all away for some cryptic invitation from a stranger. What if this is elaborate human trafficking? What if he's running some kind of cult? What if you get to Paris and there's no job, no opportunity, just some billionaire's sick fantasy? Every concern Maya raised was valid, and Sarah felt them all echoing in her own mind. The rational part of her brain was screaming that this was crazy, that normal people don't get mysterious job offers from billionaires, that she should tear up the ticket and pretend this never happened. But there was another voice, quieter but more persistent, whispering that this might be her only chance to escape the life that was slowly suffocating her. At 4 a.m., Sarah called her parents. Her father, still struggling to rebuild his construction business, listened quietly as she explained the situation. When she finished, there was a long pause before he spoke. Sarah, you've spent 3 years sacrificing your dreams to help us. Your mother and I never wanted that for you. We wanted you to fly. Her mother got on the phone, her voice thick with emotion. Sweetheart, we've watched you get smaller and smaller every day, like you're disappearing piece by piece. Maybe this is crazy, maybe it's dangerous, but staying where you are is dangerous too, dangerous for your soul. Her parents' blessing gave Sarah the courage she needed, but the final push came from an unexpected source. As she was packing her one small suitcase at 5:30 a.m., she found her old college portfolio buried in her closet, filled with papers she'd written about cultural diplomacy and international relations. The car arrived exactly at 6 a.m., a sleek black sedan with tinted windows and a driver who simply nodded when she came downstairs with her suitcase. As they pulled away from her apartment building, Sarah felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. She was either making the smartest decision of her life or the stupidest, but for the first time in 3 years, she was making a decision based on possibility instead of fear. The drive to the airport was silent, giving Sarah time to think about what she was leaving behind. The safety of routine, the predictability of her small life, the comfort of knowing exactly what each day would bring. But she was also thinking about what she might be moving toward, the chance to use her talents, to build something meaningful, to become the person she'd always dreamed of being. As the airport came into view, Sarah realized she'd already made her choice the moment she opened that black envelope. The first-class flight to Paris was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. She'd flown economy exactly twice in her life, so sitting in a leather seat that reclined into a bed while flight attendants brought her actual meals on real plates felt like stepping into another dimension. But the luxury couldn't distract her from the growing anxiety in her chest. What exactly was Marcus Sterling expecting from her? The note had mentioned a proposition, but what kind of job requires flying someone to Paris with 12 hours' notice? As the plane crossed over the Atlantic, Sarah tried to prepare for every possible scenario, from corporate espionage to elaborate practical joke, but nothing could have prepared her for what was waiting at Charles de Gaulle Airport. A driver holding a sign with her name led her to yet another black sedan, and they drove through the streets of Paris in silence. Sarah pressed her face to the window, drinking in the city she'd dreamed of returning to for 3 years. The familiar sights, the Seine, the Eiffel Tower glinting in the afternoon sun, the tree-lined boulevards, made her chest tight with longing. But instead of stopping at a hotel, they pulled up to a gleaming office building in the business district. Sterling Global's Paris headquarters occupied 12 floors of steel and glass, and as Sarah rode the elevator to the top floor, she felt increasingly out of place in her best dress, which suddenly seemed woefully inadequate for whatever was about to happen. Marcus Sterling's corner office was exactly what she'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, minimalist furniture that probably cost more than her car, and walls lined with awards and photographs of him shaking hands with world leaders. But Marcus himself was a surprise. In person, he was smaller than she'd imagined, with kind eyes and an easy smile that put her slightly at ease. "Sarah," he said, standing to greet her, "thank you for taking the leap of faith. I know this must seem completely insane." He gestured to a seating area, away from his imposing desk, and as they sat down, he got straight to the point. "I'm going to be direct with you because I respect your intelligence. Sterling Global has a problem, and I believe you might be the solution." He pulled out a thick folder and spread its contents across the coffee table between them. Contracts, financial reports, photographs of elegant French boutiques and luxury goods. "We've been trying to break into the French luxury market for 2 years, Marcus explained, and we've failed spectacularly every single time. Our teams are brilliant, Harvard MBAs, experienced negotiators, people who've closed billion-dollar deals. But they keep making the same mistake. They approach French business culture like it's just another version of American business culture, and the French companies keep showing them the door." He leaned forward, his expression intense. "What I saw at Murphy's Diner wasn't just someone who speaks French fluently. I saw someone who understands the subtle art of cultural bridge building. The way you handled that situation with Madame Dubois, the respect, the genuine connection, the ability to navigate between 2 different worlds, that's not a skill you can teach in business school. That's either something you have naturally, or you don't have it at all." Marcus reached into his desk and pulled out another folder, this one even thicker than the first. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to meet with the board of directors at Maison Laurent, one of France's oldest luxury fashion houses. They've been family-owned for 6 generations, and they've turned down acquisition offers from every major corporation in the world. Our previous teams have tried everything, financial incentives, market projections, corporate synergy presentations, and gotten nowhere. He slid the folder across to Sarah, his eyes never leaving her face. I don't want you to present financial data or negotiate terms. I want you to listen. I want you to observe. I want you to be the bridge between their world and ours. If you can help us understand what they actually want, what they're really afraid of, then we can structure a deal that works for everyone. The meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Maison Laurent's flagship store on the Champs-Élysées. Sarah arrived 30 minutes early, using the extra time to walk around the neighborhood and absorb the atmosphere. She'd studied the company's history all night, founded in 1892 by a master leather craftsman, passed down through 6 generations, known for handbags that cost more than most people's cars, but had waiting lists years long. When she finally entered the store, she felt like she was walking into a museum. Every surface gleamed, every detail was perfect, and the few customers browsed in hushed tones like they were viewing priceless art. Sarah was led upstairs to a private salon, where she found herself face-to-face with Madame Claire Laurent, the 72-year-old matriarch who'd been running the company for 30 years. What happened next surprised everyone, including Sarah herself. Instead of launching into the prepared talking points Marcus had given her, Sarah found herself drawn to a vintage photograph on Madame Laurent's desk, a black-and-white image of a young man crafting a handbag by hand. "Your grandfather?" she asked in French, her voice soft with genuine curiosity. Madame Laurent's stern expression softened slightly as she nodded. "He made every piece himself in those days, 15 handbags a week, never more. He believed that luxury wasn't about having more things, but about having perfect things." For the next 2 hours, they talked not about business plans or profit margins, but about craftsmanship, heritage, and the fear that modernization would destroy everything the Laurent family had built. By the time Sarah left that meeting, she understood something that all of Marcus's Harvard-trained negotiators had missed. This wasn't about money, it was about legacy. The Laurent family wasn't afraid of losing control of their company. They were terrified of losing its soul. That evening, when Sarah presented her findings to Marcus, she didn't give him a traditional business report. Instead, she told him a story about a family who'd spent over a century perfecting their craft, who saw their company not as a business, but as a work of art, and who needed to know that any partnership would honor that vision rather than destroy it. 6 months later, Sterling Global successfully acquired a 40% stake in Maison Laurent, not through aggressive negotiation, but through a carefully crafted agreement that preserved the family's creative control while providing the global infrastructure they needed to expand. And Sarah, she never went back to Murphy's Diner. She became Sterling Global's Director of Cultural Integration, traveling the world to help bridge the gap between different business cultures, finally using her talents in ways she'd never imagined possible.